Welcome back to 101 East. Now, the benefits of a good education are obvious, but the downside is it tends to suppress the birth rate. Many of the girls in classrooms like this will eventually choose to delay or dismiss having children to pursue their educational and economic opportunities. One woman who's facing that choice right now is EUNICE OLSEN. Here's her story in her own words.
My name is EUNICE Elizabeth OLSEN, and I am going to be 31 this year, and I'm single. I was with Singapore Universe 2000, quite long ago. When I was younger, I thought, okay, when I'm 30, I might have 2 kids and all that. But then when I turned 30 and, you start being more independent, whether monetarily or you start carving out a career for yourself. And you realize that that kind of independence that you gain, you get comfortable with that kind of independence. Well, I've been playing the piano since I was 3. I've always enjoyed music and always loved music. And in 2004, I went to Korea to cut an album. I got a call when I was back from Korea to ask me to apply for the position of nominated member of parliament. And that's how I really got into it. And so I was appointed in 2005, and this is my second term, starting 2007. I think men, but maybe not a question of whether they use their idea, but I think they have to deal with the fact that women are now very empowered and that we're very educated and we can go out and carve out a niche for ourselves, and we can get ahead and basically have a career and be independent and lead a corporation or lead a country. Maybe now women have higher demands. It's not just about having someone to take care of the family, because I'm capable, or women now are capable enough to go out and be independent and find their own money. But maybe it's something a bit more. Maybe it's about finding that right partner to settle down with. Yeah.
And still with me here in Singapore to discuss this issue are PAULIN Straughan of NUS, Philip BOWRING, who's a journalist from Hong Kong, and Tan Joo Him, former president of AWARE here in Singapore. Joo Him, I'll put this to you. Is there a factor here, an argument to be made, that perhaps one of the reasons why women are delaying and sometimes dismissing childbirth could be just as much entrenched in the way of life that we are stressing, that perhaps we're not putting enough importance on the value of motherhood and families at the expense of stressing far too much commercialism and achievement and money?
I think that is definitely one of the factors. I'm actually an unemployed, I'm a full-time mother. I mean, people object to the term full-time mothers, but I can't think of another term, and I think that's one indication of the problems of this vocation of motherhood. Nobody has quite a term for it. And when I go out and meet people and I say, hi, what do you do? I says, oh, I'm not actually employed. People lose interest immediately. They kind of write us as a group off.
I mean, there's a fundamental, disequilibrium in economics about this, because children are an investment, but they're not treated as an investment either by governments or in national accounts or in any other way. I mean, if you think of the time and energy which goes into raising a family, right? And without that, there's going to be no productive capacity in the future.
The reason why children are sometimes regarded as an expense as opposed to an investment is because we're putting so much emphasis on consumption, on material demonstrations of wealth, isn't it?
Well, I beg to differ, because I think that if you speak with young adults, I just finished a study on singles in Singapore. Generally, the ideals in place are socially, politically correct, okay? They value marriage, they value family, and they value procreation, and they value children as investments. Many of us want to have children for intrinsic reasons. So here is this fine line.
But Singapore, more than most places, has a massive stress to achieve on all its young people, men and women.
Well, I mean, the fact is that, policies in Singapore are different from Japan, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Korea, and yet they're all basically in the same boat.
On the one hand, having said that one should stress more the values of having children, one of the other elements that seems to crop up is that Singapore and the Asian nations do tend to have childbirth and wedlock in that same basket. And one of the things that the Western nations don't stress so much is that very idea, and children outside of marriage have a much higher proportion. Is that something that we should reconsider here?
I think so. I mean, the government stresses Asian values, and East Asian countries have similar familial values, and I think that's great. But in Singapore, we have discriminatory policies against single unwed mothers, and I think that is probably counterproductive because these children are born. They can't help it. But to penalize them and not allow them to reach their full potential, perhaps it's.
I'm not sure if we actually penalize them in Singapore. I think that clearly, it is not encouraged. But I think that the government certainly is trying to do a lot more now for single mothers who inevitably end up in a situation which may not be their choice, right? And these generally are fairly young women, still in the prime of their lives, and most of them are in that situation not because of choice.
Could I come back there? I mean, we can't just talk about East Asia as a whole, because really we're talking about what Lee Kuan Yew describes as chopstick Asia. If we look at the situation in Malaysia, for example, we see actually a rather different situation. Malaysia is not quite as urbanized as the other countries, but it's getting that way, has much higher birth rate. If you look at the situation in non-Chinese, non-Sinic Southeast Asia, you find there's none of the gender discrimination that you get certainly in China and certainly you get in Korea, where you've got these huge male-female imbalances which further distorting the situation, perhaps not in Singapore or Hong Kong, but certainly in China and certainly in Korea.
Would you speak to that? I mean, the gender imbalance in Singapore, how far does it have to go before it can reach an acceptable level as far as you're concerned?
Well, first and foremost, there should be measures in place to prevent discrimination of women at work, because there are a lot of women who are harassed while they're pregnant, various forms of discrimination, including being dismissed.
Of course, when you look at gender, equality anywhere in the world, most women would always tell you that there's more we can do, right? But I think if you look at the history of women in Singapore, we have come a long way, right? So moving forward, I think one of the things that we need to address really is to try to balance women's desires to have a vested interest in growing their investment in work, but at the same time also be able to grow family. And it's a very difficult equation to derive because at the bottom, there's always concern for cost, right?
But in the context of the Northern European countries you mentioned earlier on, what's the difference between Asian societies and those in provision for maternity, for the idea of children?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's huge differences, but and it's quite noticeable, if you look at the data in Europe, the difference between sort of facilities that you get in Sweden and what you get in Italy or Greece, or the difference between France and Spain, for example.
All these cost a lot of money, though.
Well,
that's the other thing.
But I mean,
we review the Scandinavian outputs,
any country which boasts, the world's largest foreign exchange reserves relative to its population, must wonder whether it's investing in the right things when it's got a total fertility rate of 1.1.
1.2 now.
1.2 now. Okay,
2.9.
Is it investing in the right things? I think this is a crucial question for all of East Asia at the moment.
Okay, a final word, Joo-Him, from you. Is there hope in the future, or is Singapore destined, as one person that I read put it, committing suicide on a national basis by not having enough children?
I think things are changing a bit. It's just whether it's changing fast enough for people, And as Pauline said, married people want to have children, but people don't want to get married in the first place because there's too much gender inequality. Once you get married, the woman working full-time still is responsible for over 70% of the household
Final
chores.
prognosis.
I mean, if people put as much effort into pro-natalist policies now as they put into reducing the rate of birth back in the 50s and 60s, when that was very necessary, then we would probably cure this problem, because people would take a serious look at the underlying causes. But so far, by and large, they're not.
Pauline, finally from you.
We're heading in the right direction in that awareness has been raised. Clearly there's a lot of work involved here, but I think that investment in pro-natalistic policies must be balanced also against investment in other parts of the population, right? I mean, we have to look after the elderly, those who are single, etc., etc. So we can't be dimensional in the way we focus on this. But I think that if we continue to stay focused on investigating this problem, hopefully the birth rate will not fall further.
There we'll have to leave it. Thank you all very much indeed for being here tonight. And that's all from this edition of 101 East. We'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.